So here's the final print. So keep watching this video to learn how I made this 3D print for my wife. Here on You Do It. Hey, this is John with You Do It. Today's video is about printing a Valentine's gift for my wife Sherry. I like to bleed in different technologies to make a gift. And I found that 3D printing is one of those that really has a shock and awe pretty quickly. So this flower was designed by MatterHackers. I hope I'm saying their name right. It was released on February 4th of this year, just in time for Valentine's Day. Sean pointed this out to me in our live stream, so I figured I'd give this a try. So this is printed with Repkord Filament. It's the Purple Haze. The bed temperature was 60 degrees, and the extruder temperature was 215 degrees. Since it is PLA, it's a typical printing temperature. And I used 100% infill. At the bottom of the model there's a hole, and I was able to print a stem, which is what I'm printing now, and that stem easily fit onto the bottom of the flower. The color is amazing. So I'm going to show you what I did to print this model. FDM, which is fused deposited modeling, and what it does is this head extrudes a little bit of plastic at a time and fills in a little gap and keeps doing patterns and connects each successive level by essentially welding the next little bit to it. So that's the stem that's being printed right now. You can see that on the screen. And it just finished. So let's see if we can remove it. We'll insert the stem into this hole here. You just think it's cool that I was able to print a flower. This is an FDM printer, which means that it's fused deposit modeling. It takes a little bit of filament that it extrudes out the nozzle. There's a nozzle at the very bottom of this extruder, and the plastic is on this roll. This is the filament. Filament goes into the extruder heats up. This motor here is the extruder stepper motor. It has a gear on the inside that as it turns, it grabs on to the filament and forces the filament into the hot end. The hot end is hot, and as the filament is forced into it, it goes under pressure, it melts, and the pressure forces it through the nozzle. The nozzle on this printer is a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. Now to give you an idea of how small that is, that's the nozzle. Now this is a ruby nozzle. The end of this nozzle, you can't even see on the camera. The end of this nozzle is 0.4 millimeters in size. I would only be able to show it to you under a USB microscope. 3D printing uses an extruding process, and the extruder forces filament heated to the temperature at which it melts through a nozzle. The nozzle that I'm using is a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. And what that means is when it comes out, it's approximately 0.4 millimeters in thickness. That little bit of filament that's extruded, that little bit of thermoplastic that is extruded, is deposited in a certain pattern. And the pattern is dictated by the model and what the computer tells it to do. There's a process that we go through to convert this model into a language that the 3D printer understands. So the model of this flower was created in a file format called STL. This STL file is not really ready to be used by the printer. I have to convert it into a language that the printer will understand. So this is the model that I used. You can see this model was made by Maz and Atero. And all you do to find a file, I just typed in flower, but I was given a hint on what flower to use because Sean suggested it to me. I download that file and then I import that file into the slicer, and I'll show you the slicer here. Alright, this is the slicer I'm using. So I'm going to add the flower. This is the model of the flower. And I can zoom in, I can rotate it around. You can see it's really high number of polygons on there, and they're the polygons. As I zoom in, you can begin to see the polygons. Now there's one printer setting that I want to change, and it's the infill. So I set the infill to 100%. Typically it's 10% or 20%. If you want something that's really strong, you want 100%, or if you want a certain look. So I want 100%. Now because this model's so thin, it may not matter, but if I were to scale it, it would. When I click on this model, you'll see that it measures about 2 inches by 2 inches and by 1 3/4 inches tall. That's these measurements down here. Now I'm going to slice this, and then I'm going to show you a couple things. So one is a preview. And what this does is this shows you what the filament looks like. How the filament's going to be applied. And this is the layer, so I could show you what each layer is. So I'm going to pull this. This is the first layer. Second layer is 0.4 millimeters. Third layer is 0.6. And you can see each layer builds up upon the previous layer. And this is how it's created. The head moves around and deposits a little bit of plastic along those lines. And now I'm going to show you another. This is the layers. So this is what the computer shows and demonstrates how it's doing a layer. So first, it does this skirt here. Next, it applies 3 perimeters. That's what I have it set to, 3 perimeters. And what that means is it does one outline with the head, extruding some plastic onto the bed. It does another one and a third one. And then it follows this zigzag pattern, filling in. Oh, it also does here for the hole. So it does 3 of those, and then it follows through with this zigzag pattern. And all the way through back to the end here. And I can move up to the next level. I want to show you something. I move up 1. Now look, the layers, it's a little bit different. So it's a little bit larger. But the layers it's going in an opposite direction. And the reason why it goes in an opposite direction is for strength. So they're orthogonal to one another. And there's different infill patterns that you can use. And you can see as we go through the different levels, the flower is being created. And eventually it gets all the way to the top of the pattern, and then it's done. And that's how 3D printing works. Alright, so right now I'm looking at the flower, and I'm looking at the very bottom of the flower. Now I'm going to move up towards the tip of one of the petals. See if I can focus in. And you can see that is the lines of what was used, what was extruded. I want to go down towards the bottom of the flower. So there's the bottom. You see it almost has a glass-like look because that was attached to the bed when it squished the layers down. And then this is the stem. And you see the stem, you can see the little that's what it looks like. So here's the final print. This is the vase that I printed. This is printed with Repkord Purple Haze. I have the stem here from a different model. This was printed in Inland Black, PLA. And the flower and the base of the flower was printed with Repkord Purple Haze as well. The model of the vase was taken from a Spiral Vase HD, a solid model, and that was sliced in the slicer using vase mode and printed with one parameter. And the flower and the base of the flower were printed 100% infill. Bed temperature was 60 degrees and extruder temperature was 215 degrees. So if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. Most importantly, hit that subscribe button and make sure you check out my other videos. You'll see them at the end of the playlist. You'll see the videos at the end. At the end of this video, you'll see videos that you can click on. Be sure to check them out. Thanks for watching.